Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Ruckus, where we fight tooth and nail and sometimes tongue-in-cheek over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon, and our topics tonight include the unending Chastain refrain, a familiar refrain from Brownback's critics, and a positive refrain about racial peace in Kansas City, plus roast and toast. But we begin with our interview segment and talk about Literacy KC, what it does and how you can be involved. Our guest is a former broadcaster with whom I worked a few years ago. We were at different stations, but in the same building. She was a news anchor and personality on the popular Johnny Dare program on the Rock FM. Also a news reporter and producer at Fox 4 Television. She is now the executive director of Literacy KC, an organization that helps adults and teens learn how to read. I'm very pleased to welcome Carrie Coogan to Ruckus. Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm just fine.
I didn't know that you were going to be bringing up my sordid past on the show. I thought we were talking about Literacy Kansas City today.
We will, but first, you had a couple of jobs that lots of young ladies would love to have. How did you make the transition from show business, more or less, to what you're doing now?
Well, if you'd have asked me, you know, even 5 years ago that I was going to be in this job versus the job I was in, I would have said you're crazy. But I was really lucky enough in my jobs, both at Channel 4 and on the Johnny Dare show, to do a lot of stories and work with a lot of people that I feel was really helpful. I did a lot of consumer stories, a lot of investigations, scams, stories that really helped people in the community, stories that would point out injustices or wrongs. And even on the Johnny Dare show, even though it's known for a lot of shock radio, there's so many wonderful experiences that I had on the Johnny Dare show. I got to meet a lot of wonderful people, authors, government officials.
And they did a lot of good work on that
That's
program,
right.
Raised lots of money for people who needed it.
That's right. Hope for the Holidays is a ongoing campaign that Johnny does every year around the holidays, and then even throughout the year, that helps people in this community. And more than that, brings the community together to help everyone. And so it's been a fantastic experience, but I feel like, number one, I wanted to do more within the community, and I feel like in nonprofit you really can do more. You're really in the trenches. And so to me, the transition has been difficult in terms of you don't have the publicity and you don't have a news station right at your fingertips, but it's still really important to be helping people in the community.
Well, describe the mission of Literacy KC.
Right, so Literacy Kansas City is a nonprofit that's been around for about 30 years, and the mission is to help people 16 years and older learn how to read. And so for the past 28 years or so, that's been done basically one-to-one. So we would recruit and train tutors, and then we would match them with students, and they would just work throughout the community with actual curriculum textbooks. But within the past year or two, we really felt like we needed to reach more people more quickly. And the only way to do that, we believe, is to get out into the community where people actually are. So libraries, community centers, churches, and then we wanted to add more people to the group. So we now have classroom instruction led by an instructor, followed by individualized tutoring. So there's a group of tutors who works with a group of students, and it's all led by an instructor. But the most important component to it, I believe, is also we've added a digital technology piece. So think about it. If you don't know how to read, that's terrible, right? But if you don't know how to use a computer or use any kind of technology on top of it, you're doubly in trouble.
If you don't know how to read and you're teleprompter dependent, as I am, you're in terrible, terrible shape. Does it cost anything to get the training?
No, our services are free to all students, so there's no cost involved. We do ask them to provide a little bit to help us pay for software and other materials, but basically the whole entire program to students who want to join is free.
How is Literacy Kansas City funded?
Great question. We're funded by donations from corporations, foundations. We're funded by special events that we do and individual donors. So we don't get any state or federal funding of any kind. So we really rely on people within the community to help us run our programs.
And you're involved in a major fundraising project coming up fairly soon?
Well, we're really excited. We were selected as UMB Big Bash recipient, which means that on June 22nd at the Sprint Center, there's going to be a concert with Rob Thomas, and anybody who wants to go to that concert, all the proceeds will be split between Literacy Kansas City and Restart.
Okay, do you need volunteers?
Of course, we always need volunteers. We need volunteers to help in a variety of ways. We need tutors, we need people to work in our computer lab, we need people to help with events, we need just basic regular office work. But one of the great things about Literacy Kansas City is that when you're a tutor within our organization, I just feel like it's one of the most important volunteer opportunities that you can have, because you really are working with a student. You really are in a classroom with people who really want to better their lives. They want to learn how to read. This program is voluntary. People come to us because they want to learn how to read. They want to learn how to write. They want to learn how to use a computer and digital life skills, all the things that they need to be able to become a productive citizen.
Carrie, we got to wrap it up because you're so reluctant to talk. But before we go, give us a website and a phone number.
Okay, so Literacy Kansas City is literacykc.org, and our phone number is 816-333-9332. And we're always looking for students too. So if you're out there and you're watching or you're listening and you know someone who wants to learn how to read, call us. We'll
Carrie,
help.
good to see you again. Thanks very much for coming by.
Good to see you too, Mike.
That is Carrie Coogan, Executive Director of Literacy Kansas City. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Marcus Leach is a local political consultant. Jason Grill is a former Missouri State Representative and the founder of J. Grill Media. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant, and Crosby Kemper III is director of the Kansas City Library System and host of KCPT's Meet the Past. Well, at first it looked like the Kansas City mayor's race would be a complete bore. Then the third place finisher in the primary, Clay Chastain, later joined by runner-up Vincent Lee, went to court. The allegation was that incumbent Mayor Sly James, who received 82% of the vote, was delinquent on a Jackson County tax bill and therefore ineligible to run. Turns out they were right about the bill. James failed to pay personal property taxes on 2 vehicles. James later paid, but Chastain and Lee went to court anyway, claiming the mayor's name should be pulled from the June ballot. Earlier this week, a judge ruled on the case. What was the outcome? What are the implications? We start with Marcus.
Thanks, Mike. We learned 3 things from Judge Von Stock's ruling. First, Clay had no standing. He's wasting our time. Second, that the fact of law or the provisions of law he was citing did not exist. And third, and probably most troubling of all, is that even if that fantasy statute still existed for Clay, it wouldn't rise to a remedy of removing the mayor from the ballot. So it's just another issue of someone having too much free time on their hands, interfering with local politics. And then to suggest that this somehow destroys the mayor's credibility on earnings tax issues it's ridiculous. That position that we should not pay our police department, firefighters, or roads, or trash collection because the mayor was a few days late on his taxes. I don't see the position there.
But you could argue there was a pattern. It was 3 years when he was late in paying taxes.
Yeah, but that's, I'm not saying that's okay or that that's right. I think he's been straightforward about that. He's been honest about it, but it's not a big deal. It's not something that affects the credibility of this city's, fiscal future. It's just
no negative implications for Mayor James as a result of this?
We have to look at the big picture. If we had gone back to this election cycle, 5 years ago, and we had bigger issues, more things to be concerned about, that this is the biggest knock on the mayor right now. It means he's doing a pretty good job.
Crosby, any negative implications for Mayor James out of this?
I'd like to see a little bit more humility on the mayor's part about this. He seemed to, it's an excuse factory there for a little while. I think it's not a major political issue, but I do think we're a high-tax city. We're a city that's got very regressive high taxes, particularly on the working poor, and it's incumbent upon all the political class, the master class, to actually pay their taxes. And so I think it was a bad deal for the city that the mayor, A, didn't pay his taxes, and B, didn't really show a lot of humility about having made that mistake.
I was kind of shocked that when all the news came out about all the people that hadn't paid their personal property taxes on time. I would think that if you're a politician, that's something that you should do on time. But that was kind of surprising to me, Mike.
Well, James wasn't the only one.
Right.
There were other city council
members.
candidates, yeah.
And it wasn't just one time. It was many times, which was kind of surprising.
And as opposed to most people who do pay their taxes on time, a large, it's like 92% or something like that.
It takes the sparkle off of Mayor James's personal credibility a bit, although he never said he did pay them. So,
I think that's too far. I think paying your taxes a little late is different than not paying taxes.
Let me get a sentence out here. I think the major thing that's happened in this campaign is what hasn't happened. Mayor James would be better off if he had a good, strong opposition, somebody against him to run in the election. This is bad for the city when you don't have a real election. The best thing about what's gone on is, can we just get rid of Clay Chastain, Mike? If you could take
Amen.
a personal pledge.
You know, I've tried for years.
Not one of the. There's no reason to talk about this man anymore. It is bizarre, and this is his last little blurb of going to the courts and trying to embarrass.
Can we just put him in a gondola somewhere and send the gondola off?
You know, we've had
he
so
likes-
many
he
final
liked a gondola.
Clay Chastain
We have.
episodes. He has told people, and I used to interview him on radio, and I don't know how many times he said, I'm leaving,
But the
this is it,
people-
the people have rejected me, I'm leaving
Mike,
Kansas
you can't
City.
quit
And he
Kansas
always
City.
comes back.
He has finally been rejected solidly by the people. He got, 2% this time. He came in third behind Mr.
Lee.
Lee, who no one
General.
knows.
I believe he uses the
Mr.
term
Lee.
General Lee.
General Lee.
Should there be, some people think there should be stiffer penalties for failure to pay taxes on time.
Just to follow up on that, I think I don't think this is fair. Well, I think Clay Chastain is going to be more powerful than ever because we have failed to improve voter turnout in Kansas City. You know, anytime he's going to now oppose an airport or oppose a project or push something else, he can stand outside a Price Chopper for 30 minutes.
Well, he has been doing that for 30 years, and,
Yeah,
and we're finally done with him.
5,500
Trust me.
signatures is a lot more difficult than 2,500.
How about that
getting old.
question I asked, should there be stiffer penalties for people who fail to pay taxes on time chronically?
I think the penalties are fine. I don't think this is a case of someone being habitually, crossing that I don't pay taxes line.
Well, not just James, but anybody, any candidate for public office in Kansas City.
I mean, I think he's getting probably more press about this than anyone else would, just because we don't have an actual election or issue to
never
talk
has.
about.
Every election, the Star puts on the front page somebody who hasn't paid their taxes.
So you
Who's
think
running.
this level of coverage is necessary on this
Well,
issue?
I don't
it's
think
a
there
good
was a
idea.
level
They
of
caught me
coverage.
in 1980 when I ran for the legislature, and I think everybody else ought to be caught too.
And then, so the assumption you make is then that this House somehow affects his credibility on earnings tax or other things?
I think it
No.
affects credibility a little bit, but no, not very much.
No.
Credibility in what
I mean, I
regard?
disagree with you completely about the earnings tax, but I don't think this has an effect
Marcus,
on
the
that,
Star
that
could
issue.
not have not reported this, but they didn't make a big
Well, I
story
mean,
out of it.
if the Star
They didn't
had
make a big
spent
story out of it.
30 seconds with anyone who's licensed to practice law in the state of Missouri before writing their article, they would have told them this is a waste
I was
of time.
surprised the case got as far as it did.
Well,
Why
they
wasn't
didn't-
thrown out
they didn't
initially
write-
if there
they
was
didn't
no
write
standing
about
for
it.
case
Clay
wasn't ever the
Chastain?
issue. The case-
I mean, the
the
only
issue was
person,
who's
only
paying
person who
taxes.
thought Clay Chastain would prevail was Clay Chastain.
That's right.
All right, Kansas City has had its share of racial conflict, as have all major cities, but nothing in recent years that would suggest potential problems on the scale of Ferguson or Baltimore. That was the message last weekend when Mayor James, Police Chief Darrell Forte, Police Commissioner Alvin Brooks, and other officials joined with community activists at what the chief called a peace rally. Forte emphasized his department's commitment to safety, not just for the inner city, but to all areas and all residents. The event's timing may be propitious. The summer is approaching, along with a curfew for teens who gather on the Country Club Plaza, often a site where African American youth and police come face to face, and if the past is prologue, where problems can occur. First question, can we feel comfortable that the mayor and the chief are right? Kansas City is not and not likely to be another Ferguson or Baltimore. Jason?
I think we can feel comfortable. I think that the mayor and the police chief have done a good job to build relationships in the community. I think community relations obviously are important. I think events like this are important. Do we have to be careful looking forward and make sure this doesn't happen to continue this? Yes. Do we need to address things like housing blight and affordable housing and public education and all these things in our city? Yes. So I think we need to do those things too. I also think that we're not Ferguson and we're not Baltimore. For sure.
Well, we're not going to get all those things done in the next few weeks before the summer season arrives.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's obviously we're not going to get those done, but I think that having this event before that was a good step to making sure we don't have any problems this summer.
What do you think?
I think he's doing what's necessary. I mean, first, the conditions that existed in Ferguson and Baltimore do not exist in Kansas City. Sure, we are one of the most segregated cities in America, but is progress being made? Yes. I mean, somehow this mayor, this city manager was able to come together and, someone who worked in the legislative side of city politics, it's a very difficult thing to make a deal like this happen, to get folks who want to be that anchor tenant on the east side of Kansas City. And I think these are the underlying problems, that are being addressed quite well.
Mary, you think enough is going on to control problems that may exist in the racial community?
Oh, heavens no. Not at all. The big important thing that we could do to move together the sense of peace and trust and improved relations between police and particularly young black men is to work on jobs. Jobs have disappeared from the middle of our urban centers, and the kinds of jobs that black men used to have are not there anymore.
How do we do that?
Good question.
I think government spending will be the answer.
Well, of course, we subsidize the living daylights out of other professions and other
We subsidize real estate in
parts
Kansas
of our
City, is what we do.
economy.
We subsidize real
and we
estate,
certainly
which is not jobs.
could do more to work on the kinds of
We
jobs
should
that
change
need
our
to be
economic
there.
development policy, which is all about the subsidy of corporate real estate. That's
Well,
what we should do.
Crosby,
Yeah,
do you
we
think
could talk
Kansas
about
City
that.
has any of the problems that Ferguson had
You know, there's
or
a
Baltimore?
huge study that just came out of Harvard, a guy named Raj Chetty, about neighborhoods and their effect on the poor and mobility and equality, and it shows neighborhoods have a huge effect. You look at the neighborhood that our Bluford Library is, 31st and Prospect, one of the most challenged. The city's trying to do things like the grocery store that the city council is going to invest a huge amount of money in, which may be a mistake. But then you go about 3-4 blocks to the north, and you see the evidence lab. You see the evidence lab where they have destroyed 3 square blocks that were salvageable, that had some good single-family homes. And
That's the East Patrol Division.
It's urban renewal from the 50s.
I'm probably the only person who was born and raised in that part of town, and I think I'd be ashamed to let anyone live in any of those houses that existed prior to the. And you're talking
come
about
down to
the
the library
largest.
and see the pictures
You're
of those
talking about the
houses.
largest economic development project in that side of town. You're talking about a trailer sitting outside of that construction site with folks lining up for employment, getting jobs, and being put to work. And then at the same time, you're saying the city's doing nothing.
Those are people in
And
the
then-
neighborhood who are being put to work.
At the
Marcus?
same time that
Those
you're
weren't people in the
criticizing.
neighborhood, and the people who work there won't be people from the neighborhood. They're going to come in and bring their lunches.
The data.
And they're going to go home to Johnson County.
That was the at the outset of this proposal, with the crime lab. That was a
They
clear
destroyed a
mandate.
neighborhood.
A clear mandate.
They destroyed a
For
neighborhood.
who? I mean, there's not a person.
Come
You would
down
not
to the
have lived
library.
in that
We have-
neighborhood. You may.
I
other
work,
folks
I
may
work
consider
in
it
that
now.
neighborhood through our library at 31st and Prospect, and they
Yeah,
destroyed single-family homes that were
I
viable.
would leave school every day from Central High School, walk up to Bluford, and the biggest problem is that you have a abandoned grocery store across the street. You have subprime tenants in these it's pawn shops and
And you have
liquor
drug
stores 2
houses
blocks
that the
down.
police department
And
wasn't
the first
dealing
step
with.
to fix that, to attract a
You have
developer from the
city-owned
private
homes
side,
and
is to improve-
CDC-owned homes that they
Crosby,
wouldn't fix up.
I think you're going to agree
Yes,
with me
there's a
that.
difference of opinion.
I don't have to interrupt you
maybe
here.
it's always
Marcus, get a library card, go see Crosby. And Jason, tell me if the fact that Forte blogs and texts a lot to African American youth is a good sign, if that will be a major factor in controlling any difficulties.
I mean, you can't control everything, but I think he's making a good faith effort to the community, and that's what we need.
While most Kansas City Star columnists have been fixated, to say the least, on the Kansas budget issue, Steve Rose says it pales in comparison to what right-wing Republicans in the legislature have planned next for the state. Rose believes they plan to change local elections from odd-numbered to even-numbered years to coincide with presidential elections and therefore attract more voters. Then they will change local elections from nonpartisan to partisan, meaning candidates for the county commission or the school board or mayor will have to disclose their political affiliation. On a Richter scale of 1 to 10, says Mr. Rose, the Kansas budget crisis is an 8.5. However, the potential change of local elections dates in Kansas is a full-blown 10. Is he right, and if so, why? Mary?
Well, as usual with Steve, he's close. He's close. He's off by a couple points, and he's got it upside down. There is nothing in the state of Kansas that has, historically, that is of greater significance in our lifetime than the budgeting process that's going on there right now. The state is $800 million from being able to have a balanced budget.
Less than
The
what?
tax
400.
cuts that were it's 800 now, as of today.
In the interest of time, we've discussed the budget on numerous occasions
Well,
here on
but
the program.
that's
Let's
my
talk
point of
about
view.
the thing that Steve suggests, that this other issue or two issues is a bigger item.
Well, it's big to him because he's been involved in local politics for a long time. He likes the things to stay the way they are. I supported and was an active participant in the 2000 election that made many of these jobs nonpartisan at the county level. I agree with him about that. But, we do get so many more people voting
Right.
in the presidential election that it has a sort of a democratic twist to it. But no, the budget and what's not happening is of great consequence.
Let us put something up on the screen so everybody can see this. I'm going to read a quote from the Rose column, then ask Crosby his reaction. Steve says, supporters make these two main arguments. It would increase voter turnout. We would better know the philosophy of local candidates. Then he says, while both of these are undoubtedly true, they are a decoy. For what?
Well, I think the Republicans think they'll get more Republicans. You know?
Well, I mean, is that wrong? I mean, is that?
You know, I mean, the Democrats do that too in their way. I think this is, you know, we hear about rhinos, Republicans in name only in Johnson County. This is an example of hippos, hysterically ignorant progressive policy organizers. This will make no difference in anything, in NIMBYism in Johnson County, or corporate tax credits, or virtually anything else, or abortion, or any social issue you want to. You know, I think it's silver bulletism on the Republican side. It's an irrelevant issue. It would increase voter turnout.
And it hasn't come to pass.
It hasn't come to pass, but I think Steve gets hysterical about these things, and on the Richter scale, it's about a 1.0.
Marcus, do you see any rationality in Steve's arguments?
I slightly agree with Crosby on this. You know, I've never been a fan of nonpartisan elections, just because, you know, while partisanship has its flaws, you at least have an active opposition, you know, an active, you know, opposition with, you know, viewpoints and discussions on it. So it keeps it from being, you know, just a campaign of special interest, you know, to, you know, these are the issues, and you have to then develop messages to get your side out. And I don't think any of this, I mean, we do so many things around here to increase turnout, and they're all, you know, just grandstanding.
None
you
of them
know,
are
turnout
working,
is,
by the
yeah.
way.
What about putting the local people on top of the ballot? I thought that was
Another idea, yeah.
I thought that was crazy. So that's something we should do.
There's nothing particularly partisan about what county commissioners do. I mean, there are no Democratic potholes or Republican potholes.
Well, that's the rebuttal they say for nonpartisanship.
It is the one that I'm giving,
Well,
because I think it's the one that ordinary people agree with.
There is a
They don't
fundamental
want
belief,
party
though,
politics
that-
to run the city of Prairie
I agree.
Village or Fairway. or any
Well,
of the
Steve
others.
says the way elections are conducted now in Johnson County, the results produce pillars of the community.
Well, there is a sense in which there are people who don't want to become big Republican and put a big D on their forehead or an R, and who are really civic activists and aren't interested in running
But
for
they have
statewide
political
office.
points of view. They just don't like to share them.
You know, I'm a supporter of nonpartisan elections for Prairie Village, Kansas. It works really nicely, and I don't see any reason to change it so we can know who's a D and who's an R. We already do.
We shouldn't. It doesn't matter.
To say that
Doesn't
we wouldn't
matter.
get pillars of the community by changing whether they're partisan or nonpartisan doesn't say much, does it, for Johnson County voters and their ability to determine
Well, this
who's
is
qualified
the
and who's not?
difficulty we're having in making it a super, you know, intense issue is because we're right and Steve is wrong. This is not the most important issue. that
Self-interest
faces
will
it.
And why do you care what someone thinks about gun control?
Well, he also says, we're going to wrap it up here, he says the budget crisis is not at 10 because it will be resolved.
Well,
There
it
has to be a balanced budget.
It'll be
There will
resolved
be a
one way
balanced
or the
budget.
other, but it will change the state for generations.
All right, that's silly.
And on that note, we turn to Roast and Toast, where each Ruckette sounds off on people or events in the news. And up first for this program is Crosby.
So I'd like to toast the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. This 50th anniversary of the Moynihan Report, the Chetty study I referred to earlier. All the studies that have come out over the last 10 to 20 years have justified his view of the pathology of family life and neighborhoods. However, one difference from what he said in 1965, it's not just in the African American community, it's in the white community and the Hispanic community as well. It turns out that marriage matters. Marriage is the basis of civilization, even maybe gay marriage.
Marcus.
I would like to toast City Manager Troy Schulte. You know, for the last decade, that 31st and Prospect corridor has been an ugly welcome mat to the east side, and finally someone's put a plan together that's going to change that.
How? What's changing?
The Sunfresh coming in on 31st, it's an anchor tenant. You know, anchor tenants, you'll see more than pawn shops and liquor stores. You'll start seeing folks wanting to shop at the grocery stores, and then, you know, dry cleaners and
One of many
infrastructure.
areas that have had a lack of
It all
grocery
starts with an anchor
facilities.
tenant,
All right.
absolutely.
Mary?
There's synchronicity on this show today. I would take your Daniel Patrick Moynihan toast and second it, because my roast is about the Kansas legislature's secrecy mode that they've gone into. I mean, it is incredible, amazing. And Daniel Patrick Moynihan, whose great book called Secrecy, was the best one ever written in this country on the subject. The people of Kansas need to know that this transformational budget is being written in secret, and all kinds of other things are being done without public meetings, without open debate on the subject, and it will all come down to bills on which there can be no amendments. So.
Any
Watch out.
synchronicity in your toast or roast, Jason?
Not really, except I'm going to roast the Kansas legislature, which we do a lot sometimes on the show, for
Synchronous.
overriding the Governor Brownback's veto revolving ride sharing and Uber. I was in San Francisco early this week, and I took Ubers all over the city. It cost me $7. Uber is a great service, and the legislature overriding his veto and wanting more regulations, more burdens on these drivers and these jobs, I think was a dumb move for Kansas. And now they're leaving Kansas. Hopefully they'll come back in the future, because we do have a state line here, and it becomes kind of hard for people to get back and forth and want to use Uber. So roasting the Kansas legislature.
And finally, as a former radio talk show host, I remain interested in those who actually succeed in the field. My current favorite is Julie Mason, who hosts Press Pool on Sirius XM Satellite. She is smart, funny, and a purveyor of bipartisan wit and sarcasm. She talks with major correspondents and pundits weekday afternoons from 2 until 5 p.m. Press Pool is on the POTUS channel. That stands for Politics of the United States. Sirius Channel 124, Nirvana, for the political junkie. And that is Ruckus for tonight. Back next Thursday at 7. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks for joining us and good night.